We haven't even said, shall I start us off?
Oh, I did say.
Hello. Okay, I think we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fan fiction panel. Finding your words, finding your world. So we're going to start today with, it's just going to be a chat really between us. 2 bits of housekeeping. This chat will be SFW, so please keep chat appropriate. Please put any Q&As into the Q&A tab rather than the chat so that we can keep on top of Q&A. That would be great. So we're just going to introduce ourselves first, talk a bit about who we are, how we fell into fan fiction and to Good Omens. So I'll start. My name is Andrea. My first encounter with Good Omens, well, I was a Terry Pratchett fan from the age of 14. And then Good Omens came out and I read that probably in my late teens, early 20s. I'm strictly a fanfic reader, but until Good Omens, I had never read any fanfic at all. I'm well aware that fanfic existed, and I'm well aware that it covers every genre, every possible subject you can imagine across the world. But I'd never read any of it. And then when I fell down the rabbit hole of Good Omens, the TV show, and I started Googling, and I fell down the fan fiction route, which led to me reading tons and tons and tons of stuff, which I've been loving. It is an amazing piece of the fandom. So I'm strictly a reader, but I'm going to hand over to my co-hosts, who are both amazing writers.
So I'll go next. My name is Lala. I am a fairly prolific fanfic writer. I got into Good Omens 14 or 15 years ago. A friend of mine was like, "Oh, you know Terry Pratchett?" And I said, "No, I have not read Terry Pratchett." She said, "That's a crime. I'm fixing that immediately," and lent me Good Omens, which I adored. I now have a complete Discworld collection and several unrelated Discworld books, but a very healthy Terry Pratchett collection. About 2 years after I read Good Omens, I went, hang on a minute, there was a second author on that cover, and got into Neil Gaiman after that as well, and have amassed a fair amount of his books too. I first discovered fan fiction when I was about 14. I was unattended on the internet. This is Michael Sheen in a catsuit. Yes, unattended on the internet, and I at the time, all I cared about was Dragon Riders of Pern. That was the book series I was into. I read it all the time, and I was probably looking for things about that, and somehow I stumbled across a fan fiction website, and I thought, these stories I've been telling myself, you're allowed to write them down. You can write them down and share them with other people. What a concept. So I started to look into like how you post on this particular website, which I don't remember what it was. And one of the first things I saw was a notice saying that they would not accept anything based on the works of Anne Rice or Anne McCaffrey, because they were the 2 highly litigious Anne authors who would send their pack of lawyers after you if you dared to try and write fanfic about them. So I felt very discouraged, disheartened, and I didn't touch it again until someone made a joke about a really niche British marionette TV show from the 60s in front of me. And I said, there's an idea there. Wouldn't it be really funny if someone wrote that? And then I realized I'm someone. So I started writing this ridiculously self-indulgent fanfic about a marionette show from the 60s that no one really remembers.
Which one?
It's called Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons.
Oh,
yeah. It's utterly daft. But then when Good Omens came out, I think I'd already broken the seal on writing fanfic, and my brain went, yes, we love this now. Write about this and nothing else forever. Okay, thanks, bye. And that's been my life since last May.
Hello, my name is Edna. I met, I knew about fanfics, been known 10 years ago, but I was an insufferable snob, and I thought, no, it's not for me. It's too easy. It's so. And then I started writing. I wrote a couple of Star Wars fics, a fic fic for Avengers Endgame, and half of a fic for Scaramouche, which is a 1952 swashbuckler set in pre-revolutionary France, and I'm certain that Crowley would love it. But I didn't finish it yet. When I saw Good Omens, the miniseries, I realized that my friends were right. They'd been telling me to read Good Omens. I would have loved it for years, and they were right. I watched the miniseries the day after I read the book, the day after I reread the book, and then I started reading and writing fics. And I have to say that the idea of embracing your imperfection and the relationship between that imperfection and creativity that's in the book was very important for me to decide to write, to have the courage to do it. Also consider that English is not my first language. My first language is Italian. So I was incredibly self-conscious about that, but I decided to take the plunge. And then I started doing that with other people. I it's my first fandom, by the way. I'm 42 and I fell into a fandom at 42. It's never too late. And I started meeting other people and writing with other people. For instance, Lerler, I met her doing the Good Omens Big Bang last year. And yeah, I found out that I love it, that it helps me so much and in many ways, but I think we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So do people know about your, who are in the non-fandom, know about your, for both of you, your writing fanfic? How do they know about it? They know that you've written fanfic? Do you talk about it with them?
I definitely talk about writing fanfic a lot. I decided early on that I just wasn't going to be embarrassed about it. I think Good Omens grabbed me in such an immediate and wholehearted way that there was no way I was going to be able to maintain any kind of friendship that didn't involve me occasionally going, so I'm writing this fanfic. Obviously there's like levels of knowledge that people in my life have. You know, my work acquaintances know that I write fanfic, but not the details of some of the stuff I write. Other times, you know, close friends who aren't necessarily in the fandom, but are at least familiar with Good Omens, have read some of my work. And then there's some pieces that I've written that are so far sort of removed from the initial fandom that I can give them to people to read as almost original fiction. So it's quite, yeah, I think being open about it's quite good. And yeah, definitely most people in my life know that I do it. I have at this point in my life mentioned writing fanfic in 2 jobs, which I got offered both jobs, so it's not a bad thing.
No.
Most of the people in my life know that I write fanfic. I don't know if that's because I'm queer and I realized at some point that being in the closet for me is harder than being out of the closet. Not everyone knows that what I write about. Definitely not everyone knows that I'm a Good Omens fan. Yes, I mean, some of my friends, I think that a couple of my friends have read my fics, but that's mostly because there aren't many friends of mine who are Good Omens fans. Two of them have liked something, yes.
I've read some of your work because as we got to know each other, I've read both Lola's and yours work, and yeah, the stories are great, and I've read lots of others as well. There does seem to be a stigma attached. When I was researching this, and we talked about this when we were talking together before as we prepped for this panel, that there is a distinct stigma attached to fanfic. People consider it derivative, rubbish, an insult to the author. We also found a lot of positive stuff, but do you think there is a stigma? Does it affect how you write?
I think that there is a stigma because, I mean, there has to be. There are always going to be people who hear that you write fanfic and sort of turn up their nose at it, but that doesn't mean you have to let it affect you. If I cared about the opinion of those people who are never going to read fanfiction, who are never going to understand why I do what it is that I do, you know, that's no way to live your life, I think. There's definitely an idea that fanfiction is all poorly written smut, that there's no value in it, no artistic value in it, and that's just nonsense. It
Yeah,
be further from the truth.
no, absolutely. I mean, one of the quotes I think I saw was that it was just basically, thank you for my pornography, but there is so much out there that is completely healthy, clean. I mean, if for anyone who's not checked it out, I highly recommend the two zines that are on the exhibitors page. There is the Ineffable zine and the, what's the other one, Edna?
On our own side.
On our own side zine, which is LGBTQ+. So, which I haven't got around to reading yet, but I know you've got a piece in the Ineffable zine, but not the LGBTQ one. But yeah, if anyone hasn't checked it out, please do. They are very good. Sorry, Edna, I was going to aim the same question at you about the stigma.
Yeah. Around the stigma, again, I mean, it doesn't influences me, probably because I was a victim of that idea before, and I decided, and I overcame it, so now I don't care. Usually I redirect people to the idea that, to the fact that the Organization for Transformative Works has won a Hugo Award. And when that happened, they asked the responsible people, asked the people in the audience to raise up if they had written fan fiction. And so many published. There is no doubt that they are real authors stood up. One of them is N.K. Jemisin. I mean, that's a very high bar. She just won the MacArthur Genius Grant. So yes, don't give me any of that. Actually, when I think about people reading my fics, and I am more afraid of people reading my fics and thinking that it's not well written than of people knowing that I'm writing fics, if that makes sense.
Just to say about the Hugo Awards as well, Neil Gaiman has often pointed out that he won his first Hugo Award for a piece of fiction.
He did,
yeah. Sherlock Lovecraft crossover, A Study in Emerald.
Yes, Gaiman is a big supporter of of fan fiction. He doesn't have a problem with it at all, unlike other people.
Anne McCaffrey.
Shh. Oh, God.
Fine, she's dead now. She can't stop me.
No. What are you? I know when I'm looking for fiction, I'm kind of stuck on AO3, a website called Archive of Our Own. That seems to be the only one that I've really used, which does seem to be the main one, the biggie for writers. When I'm reading, I will use the search facility to look specifically, for example, for Good Omens, for Isabel Crowley, etc. What are you looking for when you're writing? What's your creative process, Lola?
It really depends. Sometimes I'm chatting in a Discord server and someone says something and my brain goes, boom, that's an idea. Sometimes I see a piece of art and I'm like, no, that needs words to go with it. And then I become a little word gremlin until the words exist.
Yeah, the fan art is a big thing.
It is. For example, my longest work to date, which is a Notting Hill universe fusion called Soho.
I loved it.
I woke up from a dead sleep at about 3 a.m, like sat up in my bed, went, Notting Hill AU, it writes itself, AU being alternate universe. Then, because I know that I have amazing ideas at 3 a.m, then go back to sleep and forget them, I sent a text to about 3 of my friends just saying, Notting Hill AU, it writes itself. Went back to sleep, woke up again several hours later to a number of confused messages going, what are you on about? And one person going, tell me more, I'm already invested. Like 100,000 words on my desk by Monday, sort of. And so that reminded me that I'd had the idea and sort of brainstormed it out. And yeah, now the thing's completed and I think it's nearly 70,000 words. And
I did love it. And my favourite part has to be the bit where you wrote the bookshop scene, which everyone knows from the film is the Julia Roberts giving him the painting in the shop. And you wrote it as, I'm just an angel standing in front of a demon asking him to love him.
That was one of the really early scenes that I knew was going to happen. And yeah, just the whole process of writing that, it felt really organic and natural. It just came together almost like as perfectly as I could hope anything could come together. Whereas other times I have an idea and I'm like, I know this is going to work. I just have to get the words out and jam them onto the page. This is very easy. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's prompts, like prompt games, guess the author things where you've got word limits, just anything. Like inspiration can come from anywhere. And so I don't think about what people are necessarily going to want to read when I'm writing. I write the story that I want to exist.
Edna, what's your influences?
I don't have very much to add to what Lola said. For me, it's more or less the same. I would add that sometimes things happen in my life and I say, no, wait, how would Crowley or Aziraphale react to this? For instance, I was listening to Stars from Les Mis and I said, no, okay, if Crowley were to listen to this music, he'd have flashbacks of his fall. And I wrote a fic about that. I do love games and banks, which are sort of game, and being on Discord servers, because I was certain when I started writing fics that I would have been terrible with finding ideas, that I wouldn't be creative in that. Joining in games where you have a prompt and 500 words or a prompt and 20 minutes to write the fic helped me so much, convinced me that, oh, wait, I can have ideas. By the way, so anyone who'd like to give a try to writing fics, and you should join a server, a Discord server. Yes. Also, I use a lot, well, quite a bit, Tumblr. There are very nice fics, very nice recs. And from time to time, there are good recs in recommendation recs. In a newsletter called the Rex newsletter, I think, and it's very good. You can sign up. It's Gavia Baker Whitelaw and completely forgot, but the Rex Center. Yes,
This is a good time to drop two of my favorite Good Omens blogs. I think we have to mention Aziraphale's Library, which is run by a friend of ours. You can go to the library and say, I read this fic months ago, this happened, this character did this, and I don't remember what it was called or who it was by, and then someone will hopefully help you find it. Or you can go and say, I really like fics with this particular trope, and they will find you Good Omens fics that fit that. And you can also just drop messages and say, I just read this fic and it was amazing. I'd like to recommend it to everyone else. So Aziraphale's Library is a great Tumblr blog to follow. And the other one I think is called the Good Omens Planner, which gives you open Discord servers that you can join, upcoming events, zines that are accepting contributions or applications or are in pre-order or sale stages, and that sort of thing. I think that's a really, really good one to be involved with as well if you're interested in writing.
I did that with you. I actually messaged you and said, I've read this fic and I can't remember, and it had this, this, and this, and you went, it was this one. Like, it's just there.
I've read quite a lot of fics.
Yes.
My normal rule is that I do, when I'm searching for fics to read, is I normally filter by completed, because I think searching for completed fics it's just self-care, baby. I owe it to myself not to leave on a cliffhanger, and I've learned that lesson the hard way. For example, after a really well-known fic in the fandom is Slow Show, which I knew I was going to mention at least once today. I was waiting for that to finish because I didn't want to jump on it while it was in progress. I think it got to chapter 9, and I was like, that's close enough to the end. And so I binge read that all in one night. And the ending of chapter 9 is not a good place to end. So I learned my lesson. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah, there's one I'm reading at the moment that's just got to the point where the story is that one of them has a crush on the other, and he's only just got to the point where he's admitted, I love you. And the other one's like, really? End of chapter. I'm like, no!
Yeah, and that's why I don't do that to myself.
You need that payoff.
I actually like, and thanks to the fact that I read Slow Show only once it was ended, I like following a fic as they develop, because I like feeling the cliffhanger, the weight, and everything.
I can't,
especially with other people and servers. It's
Yeah.
really fun. Then
I can't carry that round with me all day. Like, it sits in my chest, waiting for. I think chapter 9 had already been out a few days. I only had a couple of days to wait for chapter 10. But just those few days, I felt like I was walking around having swallowed a rock, just like, I need more. This isn't how a story can end.
Remember the bad old days when you had to wait
time for me.
Do you remember the bad old days for your favourite television programme where you had to wait for it to come on next week? And now we have streaming, you can just binge watch everything.
I know, we're so spoiled.
Aren't we just? Let's have a look. I think we need to move on.
Yeah.
How do you feel about tagging? I find tagging as a reader incredibly useful. I think it's good as a reader to find stuff really easily if you want a certain subject, especially in AO3, as that's the only site I've used. So I can specify whether I want something to be adult or not. I can specify if I only want certain characters. It's also self-protective, because if there's a subject that's particularly triggering for certain things, I'm aware that if there's a character who's maybe pregnant or something like that, that can be a bit of risk for people's mental health. Do you find that useful? Is that essential to you as writers?
As a reader, I love tags. And as a writer, I hate them. Because I'm so bad at like remembering everything that happens in my story. As soon as it's written, I'm done. It's gone. It's not in my brain anymore. I don't have room for it. Someone else needs to deal with it. Bye. And that's just it's going to be now.
I started writing the tags as I write the fic.
I should do that, but I am not a smart lure.
No, it's...
that. So I find when I'm reading, I love filtering by tags. Like sometimes people won't tag things fully. I think that's awful. I mean, there's two, like sometimes people will do really detailed tags and you will find that fic if it is what you're looking for. And other times people do wider branching ones. So there might be a particular interest I'm looking for. A particular trope, and maybe they won't have tagged for that trope. That doesn't mean the fic isn't out there, just that I can't find it. That's fine. I'm prepared to put in the legwork to find a good fic. But if something isn't tagged, there was one that got recommended to me recently, and I started to read it. There was one tag on it that was not about the content at all. And as I read it, I became more and more sort of distressed by the idea that this was completely unwarned for. There were some really unhealthy dynamics going on that weren't being presented appropriately. And I thought, you know, I'm never going to tell anyone they shouldn't write something. You should always write your story. And if it's a dark story, if it's a filthy story, if it's something you think no one's going to read, doesn't matter. You write your story. I'm never going to, it's one of those things where I don't have to like what you're saying, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. But tag for it, because people need to know what they're getting into. And this story, eventually, I got to the point where I had to comment on it and say, you really need to add some tags to this. And I looked at the rest of the comments and they were all also saying, you really need to add some tags to this. Because I think it's just responsible as a writer, especially on something like Archive of Our Own that gives you that ability.
Yes, I like tags as an author in a way because it makes me more conscious of what I'm writing. One of the reasons why I'm writing fics is that I want to learn how to write, especially I want to learn how to write in English, and I want to learn how to write fiction. So on one hand, it's good exercise. It's taking a step back and reflecting on what you're doing. It's also very hard. Sometimes it's taken me longer to write the tags than to write the fic. Tags and summary are hard. But
already wrote the
they're
fic.
great.
Why do you want me to write it again smaller and then summarize it in tags? And then I have to come up with a title as well. No, I've already done the hard work.
It's not the hard work.
Perfect world, you'd be able to read the fic straight from my brain and I wouldn't have to lift a finger, but no, I have to do all this work.
It must be hard work. I mean, the dedication that one of the things that came up when I was looking at some of the good points and bad points about fanfic writing was fanfic is like art or a joke or theatre. It's art. And I will walk into a gallery and say, I love that painting. And one of you will walk into the gallery and say, I hate that painting. Doesn't mean that neither of us are wrong or right. It's about what you enjoy. And it's just art. So if you denigrate what writers are doing, you're denigrating their art, whether you are amateur and just doing it as a hobby, or whether, I say just, or whether you do it full time and actually want to be a full-time writer, want to be the next Neil Gaiman. There's a. I think we need to move into. We had so many. We made a long list of things we could discuss. Didn't we?
We have more topics than we can cover because we don't.
Yes, definitely.
We might need to move on to the Q&A because we have.
I did want to talk about the canon versus AU part, and then we'll get to the Q&A if that's all right. Because I think that there was some important stuff that we discussed first time around. With the obviously canon is important for fanfic writers. You know, you've got your base canon, and then there's canon compliant fics that sort of build from the world, and then you have alternate universes and things that end up being so far removed from the original source material that you can almost wonder if it's even fan fiction at that point. So I know that a question we had to ask between ourselves was, do you read only canon compliant fics, or do you like alternate universes as well?
I like the AU stuff as a reader very much. I like it to be relatively, what's the word I'm looking for? Within my world, if you like. So, for example, Soho was set in London. It was a recognisable story. I enjoyed the characters. I'm picking on yours because I've read it. So that's an obvious example. I wouldn't necessarily want to read a fanfic that they'd gone off to another planet and that they were robots and aliens and things like that and turned into, I don't know, I probably wouldn't want to read something like that. So I'd probably prefer to read something that's recognisably their characters. I love it when writers drop in little geo-references, whether you've used a line from the show or the book, the tartan, the Bentley, and any little reference that hints at the show itself is good to me.
I thought I didn't like AUs. Actually, I do. I prefer to go either with canon, which I'd say missing scenes, plus canon, or AUs that are very different, and AUs that not necessarily not human, but where the story is just takes the essence of the characters. When I think that AUs are great to see, to pin down what's essential in the characters, especially characters that are not Aziraphale and Crowley. Some of my favorite fics have great Peppers, or great Anathema, or great Beelzebub, and I love that.
To name drop my hot favorite again, I think Slow Show is the fic that got a lot of people going, oh, maybe I do like AUs, or maybe I do like when they're human. And I think a lot of that is to do with the world building and sort of parts of the story that you recognize. So you see the central characters, you recognize them as characters you're familiar and comfortable with, but they're in a completely new situation, and you can kind of, see how your characterization matches up to someone else's. Obviously, Slow Show, I say obviously, Slow Show birthed its own mini fandom, like a pocket universe fandom that got weird at points and is beautiful and one of my favorite things to have ever been involved in. And I think that was largely because it was an alternate universe story that was so rich in background and depth you had so much to work with, and not just the blank slate of a TV show with the barest of frameworks to build on. I think you're deep in fandom when you're writing fanfic for a TV show that doesn't exist. But there's so much. There's actually a lot of fic for Slow Show itself, which I think is lovely. To have people so affected by something that you've written based on someone else's work that they want to go, actually, I like this so much, I want to write this missing scene, or I want to write this from another character's perspective. And I think that's so flattering. And luckily, the author of Slow Show, Mia Ugly, she is a sweetheart and has been so nice to everyone who's like, oh, we're going to be rabid for you now. Good number of people.
It sounds like I need to read this one as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Gaiman has said world building, as you called it, is literally the chance to play God.
Yes.
Yes.
You don't get a chance like that.
Not very often. Okay, Q&A time, people.
Let's go oldest first, because I think that's fairest.
We did have a couple of advanced questions, didn't we?
We did, but I think we're actually covering there was Anathema's question about how do you go about making sure you're not copying?
How do you keep yourself from accidentally mimicking or echoing another writer's style? Which
I think is not really a concern. We're writing fanfic based on someone else's work already. If you find that you're influenced by someone else's style, I definitely am. There's times when I know I've been reading a lot of one particular author's work, and my author voice does shift slightly to maybe become a bit more poetic or a bit more descriptive. I might focus on something differently for a while, and I think it all adds up into the big rolling snowball of yourself as an author. You start with something small at the middle, and it just rolls and rolls and rolls, and you add things on like a big Katamari. That's not important. But yeah, I think you build on things like that for yourself. And part of that is going to be building your voice, finding your voice, and that's definitely going to be related to trying out other styles. And no one should be accusing that, unless you're literally copying and pasting someone else's work. You shouldn't be afraid about whether you're copying, especially in a fandom with as many works as Good Omens has, because the two cakes theory is really well known. Sometimes you just want to eat 9 carrot cakes in a row. So if you're writing a story with the same premise, Soho being based on Notting Hill, Crowley is a rock star, and Aziraphale owns a bookshop, and my very good friend / twin, Caedmon, is writing another story where Aziraphale owns a bookshop and Crowley is a rock star, but they're entirely different stories, and they'll have there'll be some crossover in audiences, there'll be different audiences for both as well, and there's room in the world for both of them, and countless other stories where Crowley is a rock star and Aziraphale is a bookshop.
Yes. For me,
I don't think copying is a worry.
Yes, for me, actually, again, I'd like to learn how to write. So copying other people's style is actually sort of an exercise I do. It's both, someone said that you find your style by failing to copy other people's style, your hero's style. So it's fine. Actually, I like it. It's one of the things you actually do, I think, as to start writing fics. I see a question about any advice for new fanfic writers.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions.
Story.
Just right.
Yeah. The best advice I think we could give anyone who wants to start out writing fanfic, and there are several questions along those lines, is to just do it. you've got a story in you, if you know you've got an idea, just sit down and write it. If you write it out by pen, by hand, if you type it up, you don't even have to share it. It's better if you do, because I want to read it, because I have eyes and time. But yeah, no one should tell you that your story isn't good enough. There's no bar for entry to fanfic writing. You don't have to, pass a test before you submit your first story. It doesn't matter if you're writing in English, if English isn't your first language, if you're writing in what is your first language and it's not English. Like, there's room for everyone. And if you don't see room to sit down, it's fine, we'll budge up, there's plenty of space.
Don't worry about not being good, really. You get good if you really, but
only way to get good is practice.
Yes.
At anything in life.
Trust me, I've seen people who are incredibly talented, whose output is so little because they are incredibly self-conscious. Put out everything, really. Something will stick. And don't be afraid of, I'm not afraid of interacting with commenters. Leave comments, by the way, leave comments, leave kudos. We are always craving
comments.
We crave.
Starving. That was something I was going to say. Yes, I don't know a single fanfic writer who doesn't have an unhealthy relationship with validation. And I think it's the same for writers in general. If we're creating something and putting it out into the world, it's because we want people to tell us they like it. Don't tell us you hate it, we'll cry, but do tell us you like it, especially if you can say that you specifically liked a particular part. That makes our day. Even just a comment is, even just a comment that is, I really like this, thanks for sharing. I'm like going to look at that and be like, oh my goodness, I'm so happy today. And it's that easy to make a writer's day.
On the opposite side, do you get told in the comments, really liked it, but would have loved it if you'd written it this way?
Oh boy, yes, and that is really rude. If the author doesn't say that they are welcoming constructive criticism or anything like that, if you don't have anything nice to say, follow the advice of Thumper's dad and don't say nothing at all.
I like constructive criticism as long as it's constructive and it's not about the story I told. So I would have liked Adam to have a love story with Warlock, whereas you paired Adam and Wensley. No, please. This happened.
Yeah, if you want a different version,
more or less, not exactly that. It's telling me, hey, I think that you use the second person and the present tense, but maybe a first person would have been nice too. Okay, let's talk about that. I'd like to. I love my betas. I love my beta readers. I love how they comment me. I welcome their criticism. But be polite and always respectful, and assume that people don't want your criticism. Be nice as a rule.
Yeah.
There's a question, is there things that you feel you will never write or outright refuse to write? I think that kind of touches on something that you said, Lerla, when we've chatted before, that fan fiction is free therapy.
Fanfic is free therapy.
So if you want to write something about it, because your mind is, you've had a bad day and your mind is full of rubbish, you're just going to go blah, blah, onto the page and write something horrible about this character because something horrible's happened to you.
Yep.
But is there a subject you would never cover?
I won't do permanent major character death. I always need a happy ending, or at least a hopeful ending. Personally, I you know, full respect to people who can write that and people who actively read that. You know, fanfic is free therapy for everyone, and we've all got our own stuff to work through. And fanfic is, you know, disclaimer, fanfic is not an actual replacement for therapy with a qualified professional, but oh boy, it doesn't hurt. Just, yeah, this is what I said earlier. You know, I might not always like what you have to say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. You can tell whatever story you want, as dark or as twisted as you want, or as light and as fluffy as you want. There's an audience for it, and someone out there will love it. It might not be me, but that doesn't mean it's not a great story. It just means that perhaps there's something in it that I find upsetting or triggering or something like that.
Yeah. I guess that goes back to the trigger tagging and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
That's the same.
Okay, I'm going to try and blast through a bunch of these. So, Sarah, she says, have you always wanted to be a writer? Do you write for your day jobs? Do you want to, or have you written original fiction? I have not always wanted to be a writer. I do not write for my day job. I have written original fiction, including an amazing story where a dinosaur is elected Pope.
I haven't always wanted to be a writer, but I know that I was so scared of being openly creative, especially because I was so scared of people realizing that I'm gay, I'm queer, that I'm not sure that I never wanted to be a writer. I'd like to be a writer. I've written not exactly original fics, I've written autobiographical things. I'm trying to write something original. I write in a way for my day job. I am a translator. So, and that helps me, by the way, learning how to write, because I look at texts and I cut them into tiny pieces and put them back together. And that's a good exercise too.
Okay, so I'm just really going to blast through because I can give really quick answers, and
We're gonna have to
there is.
Yeah, okay. How do you get from inspiration to actually jamming the words onto the page? For me, I literally go, oh, that's an idea, and then I start writing it. I maybe think a little bit about what the form of the story is going to be. I'm not a big planner. I don't tend to have great, you know, notebooks full of plot points or anything like that. I largely have an idea of what things are going to be like. Maybe I write out a sort of synopsis so I don't forget things, but really I just jam words on the page, and if they work, they work.
Just right.
Yeah, it really is just right.
Yes, I'd like to answer one last question, which is there a difference in which queer and LGBTQ people approach fanfics? Yes, we crave representation more than cis and het people. So yes, I think that it's also, we find our community on a big community. I found a lot of other genderqueer people, thanks to Good Omens. I realized that I'm genderqueer thanks to partly Good Omens, partly interaction with these people. So yes, it's something big for us.
I think that Neil summed it up in the panel yesterday, saying that the Geo fandom is beyond, it's just amazing. And one of Michael Sheen's tweets, when he was questioned about supporting fan fiction, when a tweeter accused him that it was just for 12-year-olds, his reply was, I will unashamedly and unapologetically celebrate the joy and warmth and creativity of a community of people sharing something positive, beautiful, and connective. I won't finish the sentence with the words he used at the end.
Yes, and that's beautiful. I am just going to say that I don't know about everyone else, I'm going to be hanging out in the Zoom chats after this, so if people want to ask more questions specifically, I will be about. I'm Lurla on AO3. Edna is Edna V. And I'm Lorito on Tumblr with 1 R and 2 T's, but otherwise like a burrito.
Guys, post your links in your post in the chat so that everyone can.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'll try, but my laptop hates everything, including
Yes.
and Lurla Saurus on Twitter. So you can.
Guys, we'll post all of the Lola and Edna will post all that in the chat so that you have the links. I'm not a writer, just follow these two. And that's it.
Been trying to answer things as we can, but yes.
Bye from Azzy and Crowley.
Bye.
So much, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yes.
Thanks so much, guys.